Welcome to our attendees, whether you are attending live right now during the live version of this program, or whether you are watching later on the recorded version of this program. Oh, and also I wanted to welcome our panelists tonight. Thank you all for spending some of your time with us today. I'm Jillian, and I am a library assistant with Council Tree Branch of Poudre Libraries. We have also joining us tonight from Poudre Libraries, I have Jenny, who is one of our, one of our teen services librarians. She was just waving. Jenny will be helping to monitor the chat and giving me reminders if I get off track. We also have Ludi with us. Ludi is our bilingual outreach librarian, and she will be helping monitor the chat as well. So let's see here if I can, there we go. So this will be kind of some of our agenda for today. So you can kind of look at this as as I'm talking. But when students are heading off to college, one of the things they frequently hear from adults is college was the best time of my life. You're going to be in for the greatest time. It's going to be amazing. I'm so jealous. I want to be you, yada, yada, yada. And while there's truth in this, college is full of wonderful potential opportunities for self-discovery, learning, growth, and meaningful new friendships or connections. What often gets glossed over is that the transition to college can also be really hard. So students, especially in their freshman year, frequently experience challenges which can feel jarring and unexpected. And for anyone in our audience tonight that is a first-generation student who doesn't have maybe familial experience to draw upon when they're encountering challenges, those can feel particularly daunting. So we hope that all of our attendees will come away from this evening and in our program knowing a few things. First, that these challenges are normal, you're not alone. Also, that they are temporary and it won't feel like this forever. And also, more importantly, feeling empowered and confident that you'll be equipped with strategies to manage challenges and know where to look for resources in your particular college that can help you along the way, that the challenges don't have to derail you. So with that, we have 4 panelists joining us tonight. They are Allie Stubbs, who is a student success coach at Purdue University. And we have 3 student panelists that are currently attending college, Caroline, Jesus, and Izzy. And I'm going to throw it to them now to let them give a brief introduction about their background. And for ease, we'll just go alphabetically, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'll let Allie jump in first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allie Stubbs, and I am a student success coach at Purdue University. So in my role, I provide one-on-one coaching, mentoring, and advising for college students from their very first day at Purdue all the way through graduation. I also teach a course for first-year students that focuses on making kind of a successful and smooth transition from high school into college. So I'm so excited to be here tonight to share some of my own experiences and learn from our student panelists.
All right, Caroline, go ahead. There you go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Caroline. I went to Fossil Ridge High School, so I'm familiar with Fort Collins. I'm not like a rando. But I currently am going into my junior year at Cornell University, studying industrial and labor relations. It's kind of like a business major minus the math. I'm interested in going to law school. I kind of had an interesting path. Instead of going into my freshman year in August, I actually started over the summer after my senior year of high school. So I had to do a summer program. And so I, just 2 weeks after graduating from high school, entered college. And so it was a pretty jarring experience to just go straight into college. And I actually ended up going to college in New York. So questions about out-of-state stuff are very welcome. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hi, everybody. My name's Izzy. I'm coming into my second semester over at CSU studying health exercise science with a concentration in sports med. I went to Rocky Mountain High School, so I'm also pretty familiar in the area. And my path as well is a little different. I took a gap year and a semester, so I didn't go to college straight out of high school. So any questions about that is welcome.
Hey everyone, my name is Jesus Castro. I also went to Fossil Ridge High School about a few years ago. I'm a junior at CSU. I'm a theater major, and I'm also trying to pursue a minor on ethnic studies and film studies. And my goal is to go to grad school for eventually, I don't know, like still like trying to figure that out if I'm going to do it right after I'm done with my bachelor's or we're going to take a break. But also like my trajectory when it comes to college is a little different. I went to Front Ranch Community College first, on and off for a few years. I tried different career paths, and then eventually I went back to school to do what I always wanted to do, which was theater.
Terrific. All right. Thank you for our four panelists for sharing a little bit about yourself. Before we move into our panel discussion, a couple things. For our attendees, if you would like to share a little bit about yourself, if you want to tell us, for example, your name, what year you're in, if you're a rising freshman, if you're getting a jump on things, but you're still in high school. If you are a rising freshman, you want to tell us where you might be going to college, if that's comfortable for you, or just if you're going in-state, out of state. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. It's optional. You don't have to, but if it's comfortable for you, I'll allow you to do that. Or if you prefer putting that information in the chat, it'll go to our moderators.
And you should be able to unmute yourself so that you can speak if you want.
Thank you. Okay. I'm seeing some things populating in the chat. So we also have somebody that is joining us that is taking a gap year. Congratulations on graduating from high school, Maria. That's going to be exciting. We have a parent. Absolutely. This is also good information that we'll be sharing for parents. As a parent myself of 3 kids who are college age, it is important to kind of know the things that they are going through. All right, so I'll let you continue to share those things in the chat if you want. I see that our panelists are pinned to my screen. So at this point in time, I can't actually see raised hands. So if you do have a question, feel free to say it that way. Okay. Oh, I see. Now we're looking at everybody. So if you want to raise your hand, you can. And I'm going to go ahead and move on if I don't see anything, because I don't want anyone to feel put on the spot. So I do want to know, or we'll let you know also as a reminder, we will have a time for question and answer at the end. So once you've kind of heard the things that we have talked about, feel free to put a question in the chat or raise your hand at that question and answer time later on. All right. Panelists, are you ready to get going? Okay, so Allie, I'm going to start with you. If you could talk a little bit about what are some of the common challenges that you've observed in your role as a student success coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first things you learn doing a job like mine is that every single student has a very different story and very different challenges. But there are definitely things that I hear a lot from students when I talk to them. One of the biggest ones, especially from first-year students, I have so many students who come in, sit down in my office, and they're like, college is hard. So there really is this transition period that is challenging. Even if you are so excited to go to college, you're so ready academically and personally, it is still a transition period, and that has its challenges. So I think that is very normal and something I hear from students a lot. I also find that a lot of students either struggle to find the resources that exist on a college campus or are a little bit hesitant to use those resources. So in college, there are so many different resources that are available to you, but usually you have to seek out those resources. It's very rare for someone to just come up to you and tell you exactly where to go and how to solve your challenge. But if you're willing to put in the work to find the resources, they definitely exist. So being willing and able to use the resources that a college offers. I also hear from students all the time that college is tough because you do not have a parent, a guardian, friends, people to motivate you to make sure that you're using your time well. In college, it's all on you. And that can be tough when something as simple as if you have an 8 a.m. class, you've got to get yourself up and out of bed. And that's a lot harder when you don't have a parent to shake you until you wake up. So starting to learn how to be independent, to manage your time, to be motivated, even on the days when your bed is warm and it's snowing, is a challenge for a lot of students. And then the last one that I hear really frequently is that students tend to compare themselves to the people around them in sometimes unhealthy ways, where it's really easy to feel like everyone else is doing great academically, has a million friends, and you maybe don't. So I hear from students constantly that they feel like everybody else is doing so well when they're struggling. So I think the challenge to not compare yourself to other people is a big one for a lot of my students.
Thanks, Allie. And so turning to our student panelists, let's start with talking about some of those things that Allie was just talking about in terms of advocating for yourselves. Can you talk about ways that are challenges that you've had in taking that initiative to ask for help in solving problems, especially at large universities? I think that can feel a little bit overwhelming. Can you talk about what your approach was to that, especially when it felt intimidating or when you didn't succeed right away?
I can go.
Sure.
I think for me, it was like it was so different, going to Front Range Community College, which was like a smaller campus. There were resources, but they were like, less offices, less people. So I was able to figure out things out a little faster. But when I went to CSU, it was a little overwhelming. I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do, but I always been that one person that if I need something, I like to advocate for myself. So like if I needed something related to mental health, I will go talk to my advisor and she will provide me those resources. I will talk to professors. I will stay even like a little after class or get early to class so I get to know professors so they can help me navigate those spaces. And the thing is that you have to ask. It's something, before like with my parents, even though like I'm older, like my mom will be like the one person like I was like, Mom, I need this and this. And she's like, got it. Like, or like she will tell me who to call. In this situation, like you have to do that. And sometimes you don't know how to ask those questions. But if you go and ask someone, if you go to like a club or an organization as well, like there's always someone that is willing to help you. And there are a lot of resources. The thing is that you have to go look for them. You have to ask. And that gets a little tricky sometimes because you don't know where to go. But I will say just start with the people on your department, the people in your building, and that's a good start. And then you can take it from there based on my experience.
Thanks, Jesus. Did you all have anything to add?
Yeah, I can follow that up. Like, I would definitely echo the point about talking to professors and TAs, especially during office hours. And I find that, like TAs and professors can be really great for like different resources. So like TAs are going to bring, and when I say TA, I mean like a teacher's assistant who's usually a grad student, somebody who is maybe even pursuing their bachelor's. So they're usually younger, and they usually have kind of more of like an empathetic side of things. They want to help you because they kind of understand your perspective because they are another student. Whereas professors might be able to help you more in terms of giving you the facts, helping you succeed in a way that's a little bit more like logistical. I would also say something as an out-of-state student that I did not expect is having to be an adult and schedule your own appointments. Y'all, like, I know this sounds crazy, but like I did not realize like I would have to do that for myself. And something that I also did not expect was getting sick in college. You are going to get sick. And it's like, I don't mean to scare you, but it's something that just happens. It's a lot of young people all in the same space. you're hanging out a lot, you're spending a lot of time together, and it's just a breeding ground for like being sick and germs. And so something I had to motivate myself to do was to just be able to go to the doctor and say, hey, I've been coughing for like a month. Like, this is not normal. And so I think that not even just advocating academically, but just in terms of your own health is really important, and something that you don't really think about when you do have, you know, your parents or guardians who can schedule those appointments, give you medicine and whatnot. It's really important to be able to recognize that you might need some additional support from doctors or, you know, therapists, whatnot, in terms of your physical and mental health.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Let's move on and ask, what surprised you about the differences between high school and college? Like, how did you learn to manage your time well?
I can speak on this one. Differences in demands. For me personally, it was a little bit of a culture shock coming from like high school and then taking a gap year coming into college. You know, professors give very strict instructions. So kind of like, you know, making sure that you read through those and make sure that you understand what curriculum it is that you're like, you know, trying to learn. If the, you know, essay prompt is said this way, that's how the professor wants it, and just making sure you get a really thorough understanding of it. And then, you know, managing time well, I used Google Calendar, Google Calendar, and put all my classes in there, put all my meetings in there, and linked it to my email, linked it to my Apple Calendar, because, you know, you're always on your computer, you're always on your phone. So that definitely helped me out a lot.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those tips. Anybody else want to jump in on that one before?
I think,
Yes. I was just gonna say really quick, you know, like they always said that when you take a class and they're like each credit equals 3 hours of work, that's outside of class because that I didn't know. And I will like find myself like, oh, this is easy. And then I will like go crazy on the weekend, like, oh my goodness, I need to like do all like catch up, I need to do this. And I will say like, and it's hard because like life happens, but if things happen, like you get sick, but if you have the ability to start working ahead, like some of the work ahead, do it, because even though it might suck at first, at the end of the semester, you're gonna be so happy. Like if you're like all catch up, you're able to do everything at the towards the end of the semester, it's still crazy, but it's like it's more manageable instead of like, so I will recommend that. It's just like just keep in mind that it might also may take a little longer to do things. So just like keep that in mind because it can accumulate for that the work, the homework, everything, it accumulate really fast.
No, yeah, I totally agree with like both of those points. I think additionally, something that I didn't know about before going to college is that there's no curriculum. You know, when you're in high school, everybody's kind of taking the same thing. There's pretty much like unanimous expectations across teachers in terms of what they're looking for in papers, what the test's going to look like. But when you get into college, professors are really different. Each one is going to have really different expectations, and they're also going to like make some really goofy assignments, some interesting tests. And so I think it's really important that when you are in a class, you got to keep in mind each professor is going to think differently and have different requirements. And so again, that's why office hours can be really helpful, because it kind of gives you a better understanding of what those professors are each looking for you or looking from you individually, instead of saying like, well, this professor wants this, so this one also wants this, which is just not going to be the case.
Great points, all of you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Moving back to Allie, what resources do you think students should look for at their specific universities in advance so that they can readily access them, if needed?
This is such a good question. And I think one thing that I didn't know as a student, and most of my current students also don't realize, is how much information you can get about your college before you ever get there. Like take advantage of school websites, social media accounts. There is so much out there that you can do before you get to school so that when you arrive, it doesn't feel like this huge, crazy thing all hitting you at once. So a few different kind of categories that I would recommend looking into. On the academic side of things, see what you can find in terms of tutoring resources. A lot of schools will have kind of peer mentoring programs or something like a supplemental instruction, where they are programs generally for classes that are considered more challenging for a lot of students. They'll have other older students who have done well in those classes lead small group or one-on-one reviews. Those can be so beneficial for students. So see if your college offers anything like that, as well as looking at your specific department or major to see if there are any supports that are unique to what you are studying. Because a lot of times there are, and those are very specialized for what's going to help you and other students taking similar classes. On the more social and kind of getting involved side of things, this is where honestly social media is huge. I tell my students all the time, if they're interested in a club, go look at their Instagram account. You can learn so much about them. You can find out what students are doing that you might be interested in, so that instead of walking onto campus feeling like a stranger who knows no one, you can walk on knowing that you have a club waiting for you with people who have something in common with you. So take advantage of social media. And I know, Caroline, you mentioned earlier the health side of things, which is huge. So make sure that you have some knowledge of both the physical and mental health resources that exist. Because as you mentioned, you will get sick, things will happen. And if you wait until you have a fever and feel terrible to try to figure out where to go to get help, you're going to be so miserable. So make sure you have a doctor, you know about school nurses, you know about counseling before you ever get to campus, so that when you need those resources, you don't have to go find them because you already know where to go.
Thank you so much, Allie. Okay, so students, going back to y'all, some college students that I've spoken to have often talked about feeling moments of imposter syndrome when they get to college. So can you talk about that, whether you've experienced it yourselves, and if so, how you overcame those feelings of self-doubt or that you didn't belong there?
I guess I can start on this. So like, for those who don't know, the idea behind imposter syndrome is kind of like the sense that maybe you are not good enough for the school you're at, and that you don't really belong there and other people do deserve to be there while you don't. I think this was something that I've experienced, but not necessarily consistently, but more so in waves. So I think an example of when I have felt imposter syndrome is when I was taking a class that I really loved and was really interested in, but just couldn't get it right. And I just continued to do poorly on tests. I wasn't doing great. And I was going to class every day and I was just kind of wondering, like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. And for some reason, I just can't seem to nail this down. And I think this was a class about labor law. And my professor kind of opened the class by saying, the first test I took in law school, I got a 40% on. And whether or not that was like supposed to be a motivational thing, it was kind of disheartening. But at the same time, it's kind of a reminder that there are going to be classes that you struggle with in college, and it sucks, it does, and you will do everything in your power to like really be successful, and you just can't get it. For me, that was also economics. Thankfully, I'm done with that, but there are just going to be classes like that, and I think once I accepted that, like, this is one of those classes that it's just going to be like that this semester, and then B, like, there are other people who are also struggling, and like we're in this united struggle. It made me feel like, I kind of saw things in the bigger picture, and I took a step back and I realized, I'm at a world-class university. These people are world-class professors. They don't want me to fail. They want my success. These are kind of the things that I would repeat to myself. And so ultimately, yes, I did struggle in those classes, but I don't look back on it and have regrets or kind of dwell on those and think that I don't belong at the school I'm at, but rather I kind of see it as like a building block in my journey, something that's allowed me to learn from my mistakes, learn things that maybe I could have done differently in the past that I can do better at now, rather than making them feel like, oh, this is, I don't deserve to be here because of these struggles. So
I think for me, like, I remember I was told once that, like, when I was in high school, that people like me can't go to college because I'm a DACA recipient. So there were a lot of barriers for me to be able to go to college. And a DACA recipient means someone that grew up in this country. I came to this country but at a very young age and didn't have an immigration status. And eventually there was a program that gave us like a work permit, a social, and for in some states it allowed people like myself like to get in-state tuition. And I was told that I could never go to college, and that really stuck with me for a long time. And I remember when I will go to school, and I never thought that I was like good enough, or I feel like I was like, what am I doing here? Or what's the point of me being here? And they were times that I just it will really get me. I will be like, I will start thinking like, oh, people like you don't belong here. And I feel like kind of like I will be talking about in one of my classes and I will feel like I was a joke, or like, why am I talking about this? Or like it was so bad at times that I will say like, oh, I will get a good grade. And I'm like, oh, they just gave it to me a good grade because they feel bad. That's not a thing. Professors in college, they they don't feel bad for you because of like if you do the work, you get a good grade. Like, and it's just an example. Like, I I really argue with my professor that if I can bump my 79 to an 80, and for the most part they said no, but it had nothing to do with myself. But it was just like it just it just happened. But I will tell you, like, I will always think about that, how like being Latino, being part of this like community, I know that I belong. And I think an example for me, like, I got the best grade in the final paper of my class, so I got extra credit and I was able to bump my grade to an A. And that's because I worked really hard, just like the other students. All the students worked really hard, and I was able to do amazing work. But sometimes because we're first gen, because our parents didn't know like how to support us, or we do a lot of things of this work on our own, like what like getting to register for school, like talking about financial aid. We carrying a lot of this like weight in our bags, like just like, oh, this is, I don't know how to do this, I probably did this wrong. So you start getting in your head. But I will, but I, like I always said, like, we belong there. There's a reason why we're there. And there will be semesters that they might be more difficult than others. Like my first semester back in school, I was like, this is nice, I can do this for 4 years. The second, April 18 of a few, I was like, I remember it was in April 18, I was like, this is the hardest semester of my life. And then it got better, but it changes. But now I know that I belong there, and it's gonna be all worth it in a few years.
Thank you so much both for sharing. I don't want to cut anybody off. Are you ready for me to move on to my next question? Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to kind of combine two of my questions because I feel like it's a bridge from what you all were just saying with your experiences in terms of not feeling good enough or like you didn't belong. So somebody else from last year's panel said, it's not your job to decide if you're good enough to get in, just be yourself and do your best, which kind of touches on, Jesus, what you were just talking about, and also about risk-taking and not taking yourself out of the game before you even start something, like kind of almost, taking like exactly that. Like, anyways, I'll move on. So sorry. So talk about that, I guess, about risk-taking and putting yourself out there, and then also how it relates to maybe getting involved in extracurricular activities, things that stretch beyond your academic experience so that you have that sense of belonging in college, and how do you approach getting involved?
I can touch on this one a little bit. In terms of extracurriculars, for me personally, I'm a student who lives at home, who also who attends CSU. So it's hard going to CSU, but kind of missing out on the crazy dorm stuff or like everyone out on the weekends, or even just something as simple as like getting lunch at one of the dining halls. So I think for me, I ended up getting involved in like a student leadership work study at CSU that allowed me to like make more connections with people who also attend CSU, but also it allowed me to make connections through like resources with people there as well. So
Awesome. Thank you, Izzy. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I can kind of speak from a different perspective. So at my school, the social life is really rooted in clubs and extracurriculars. And so it's kind of weird, but you have to apply to clubs. And this is kind of something you see at like very competitive schools. Like the competition just never ends. Like once you're in, it's like you're not good enough still. You have to apply to these clubs. You have to apply to these organizations. And that can seem really daunting because you're like, I worked so hard to get in here, and then I can't be in this club, or I can't, be a part of this organization. And I've, applied to these clubs and been rejected a dozen times. And I think something I realized is that so as other people, we're all in this together. I think that something that's really awesome to get involved with is volunteering and volunteer work, specifically on campus. Your school campus is going to have so many opportunities to just apply yourself within your own passion. So like Izzy mentioned, having a work study job is also really beneficial. I went through an interesting route and volunteered at a library at my school and ended up getting a work study job within that library. And so that's been just a great way to kind of have a commitment every week and look forward to something and step away from the classroom, and also just have that risk-taking thing of like, I put myself out there, and even if I'm not in these clubs, I'm still part of my school in a different way and still meeting other people who are interested in what I'm interested in as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. Jesus, in our conversation, I don't know, I'm putting you on the spot. We had talked about also getting involved in the community too, which kind of goes with Caroline's position on volunteering, but maybe out in the community, and that's been helpful for you. Do you think this is an appropriate time to talk about that? Do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 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 my experience is like, in college, like at Sunrise and CSU, I have joined like affinity organizations, like or affinity groups, like I've been part of student government. I've been part of I was able to start a Latino club at French Community College, and I have joined El Centro at CSU on the Pride Center. Because there's a lot of resources even within those spaces. You can learn about scholarships. You can learn about sometimes they bring speakers, and they have um a book, free books, and I love books, so it's they always post oh, there's free books, and I just run to El Centro trying to get my book. But there's also a lot of resources outside in the community. There's organizations that I volunteer with, that I'm part of, a board, and also when I was being younger, I'll be oh, I'm part of a board, and it felt weird. But I was actually doing a lot of advocating for my community, and a lot of times I was also able to find resources and friendships outside of CSU, and I was able to see okay, CSU is helping me with this, it's providing these resources, but there's another world of resources outside of CSU. There's more organizations that are willing to work with the student community, and sometimes we don't know about them because if you're part of a big campus, I don't live on campus, but I live 2 blocks away, so I'm in Old Town, so everything is just oh, I need to buy groceries, I go to Target. It's right there. Oh, I need to go to a coffee shop. It's like the Alley Cat. I need to go to CSU. It's everything's right there. So it's easy for me to stay in that area. But I have to remember that there's all this other world outside, where organizations, even like the library, that they have so much resources, like so many opportunities for us. So sometimes I think it's worth it to like when you move into a new town for school, start like doing research about the work that it's happening in that community, like the organizations, what they have to offer, if there's something that you're interested about. And because like not only you're volunteering, but also you might be able to be supported in a way or another. And like networking, it's really important, especially if you like the town and you want to stay, like just like starting creating that network. So when you graduate, you have already a community outside and you can get recommendations for jobs, and you just start like, getting ready for your future.
Great. Thank you so much. I can only see my 4 panelists, so I was just going to take a quick pause to just allow anybody that had heard something that they didn't want to forget a question about to maybe direct to our panelists at this point in time. We'll still have a formal Q&A at the end. Okay. All right, so I'm not hearing any questions. So if that's the case.
Well, like I said, I did see someone with their hand raised for quite a while earlier though. So
Okay.
just to see specifically if, Hannah Glory, did you still have a question or no?
Yanni, I think she raised her hand accidentally. I've been chatting with her. Thanks.
Oh, okay. All right. Never mind.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Again, you can always let our chat box know that we have a question and that I will see that hopefully, and then we will allow you to ask that question, or we'll have the Q&A at the end. All right, so Allie, can you talk about the mental health toll that the transition into college can take on freshmen? And I know in our past conversations, you've mentioned that this is different from somebody who might already have an existing anxiety diagnosis or depression diagnosis, but just things that might hit students specifically when they go through this college transition.
Yeah, for sure. The transition into college, I think for just about everybody, is really tough on your mental health. Even if you are super prepared and excited, it's still hard because pretty much your entire life changes overnight. You might be in a new place, surrounded by new people, taking classes that look totally different than your classes in high school did. It's a lot of change to have hit you all at the same time. And that's hard on mental health, even if you feel like you were in a pretty good place before you got to college. So I think one thing that I hear from students pretty frequently is that losing their support systems is really tough, where you maybe had family, you had friends that you grew up with, and suddenly you might be at school and not have those people anymore. So when you are going through some challenges with mental health, it feels like you don't necessarily have anybody to turn to or talk to about it. And that feeling of isolation is one that I hear from students a lot. And just because of the kind of dynamics of college, it's very common to feel like everybody else is doing great. Because you will see it, you'll have maybe a roommate, you see people a lot. It's not like high school where you're at school and then you go home and can kind of disconnect from the social aspect. In college, if you are especially living on campus, you're surrounded by it all the time. And that can make it really easy for you to see everybody else. And maybe you see a big group of people sitting at the dining court together when you're sitting by yourself. And it's so easy to make that feel like everybody else has this whole college thing figured out and you're the only one struggling. So a lot of the mental health challenges that I hear about from students stem from feeling like everybody else is doing great, which makes it even harder when you feel like you're not. So I think with all of this, the number one thing I would recommend for students during that transition, it sounds so simple, but just talk about it. I have had so many times where a student will say, I'm the only one who's struggling. My roommate's doing great. My friend's doing great. Everybody's great. And I'm having a hard time. And as soon as they admit that to their peers and their friends, suddenly they find out every single one of them is feeling the same way. Sometimes it literally just takes one person to say, okay, I don't know about you all, but I'm having a hard time. And then suddenly you hear all the stories and hear that everybody else has been feeling the same way. So being willing to be a little bit vulnerable and to admit that it is a hard transition is so, so important. And then just understand it is normal. Truthfully, you're a human and you're going through a big change. It's normal for your mental health to be affected by that. I think understanding that you're gonna get through it, that it's a transition period, but once you find your people, your community, your place within college, it does get so much better. So be willing to talk about it and also understand that it is temporary, can make those mental health challenges a lot easier to handle.
Thanks, Allie. Did anybody want to address anything in that realm before I move on to the next question?
I was
We
just
did have.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Izzy, you go first. I was just going to put
Okay.
a question in the chat.
I was just gonna piggyback off of that. Like, it is so great going out and meeting new people and, you know, experiencing new things, but also like it is totally okay to like be alone. Like, it's totally okay to eat by yourself at the dining hall. It's totally okay to be at the coffee shop by yourself. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a point in time where you wish you were alone. You know what I mean? Because there's just going to be people everywhere. So like, don't take that time and like kind of sit there and just kind of, you know, feel bad about being alone. Being alone is good. It's good.
Thank you, Izzy, for adding that. We do have a question in the chat, and Allie, I'll let you have maybe the first crack at it. The question is, what types of resources do universities offer to help students on mental health issues?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked about this. This definitely is going to vary depending on the university. I work at a very large school, so similar in size to CU Boulder or CSU. So can be a little bit different depending on the institution. But especially at a larger school and even at smaller ones, it's very common to have some kind of counseling center, psychological services center on campus that's specifically for students. And that can be a great, great starting point. It's almost always free for students. It's very accessible. And you're working with mental health professionals who specifically focus on college students. So the things that you're going through, they are very well trained to help you navigate those unique situations. So I would highly recommend starting on your campus because they probably do have those mental health resources. Generally, those are designed to be a little bit more short-term. So if you have something, you need some short-term support, that's a great starting point. If you're looking for kind of longer-term mental health support, a lot of times looking into the community can be really beneficial. Just because the campus mental health, they can get a little overwhelmed. So they tend to be a really good place to make referrals out to different community resources. So start with them, and then you can have that conversation about what are my options? Where can I go if I want more ongoing help? They are so well connected within the community to make sure that they've got people who can help you regardless of insurance, regardless of your needs. They will know everyone in town and are a really good starting point. I would also recommend, as just a broader resource, there is an agency called Mental Health America that is a great one. They are all across the country and super well connected within the community. So if you are looking beyond your campus, that is a really, really great starting point.
Perfect. Thanks, Allie, for taking that. Before I move on, does anybody have anything else that they wanted to add on this topic?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to add something in terms of like support systems. And this just is like very universal. And when it comes to family, friends at home, or friends at school, is that you have to like schedule in times to talk to people. And it sounds weird because it's like, well, that's my mom. But especially with me living across the country, and I have a 2-hour time zone difference, and there's a lot of like factors that are different in our lives, it's really important that when you are looking for support, you really just try to schedule that in. I try to do that like every day in the evening, which usually works better for me and my mom. And then me and my sister also just talk a lot pretty much every day. But being able to have those like set times it's really important because then it makes sure that you are talking to your mom or you're talking to your siblings. And you're not just going like days on end without having that communication, because that happens and it's kind of weird. But you'll be like walking one day from like class and you'll be like, I haven't like talked to like my family in a week. And it's weird because every day you used to come home and you would like be sitting at your, dining room table doing homework, and it just changes dramatically. And I also think this is applicable for your friends. When you move away, you don't talk to your friends from home a lot. And even when you're at school, everybody's really busy. And so you can kind of lose sight of when's the last time you saw somebody, when's the last time you talked to somebody. And so I think it's important to just maybe have like a weekly lunch with one of your close friends or a phone call once a month, because ultimately those friendships are really important, but you won't be able to maintain those if you can't schedule in those times to talk to those people in your life. So.
Thank you. That's good points. And I know as a parent of 3 college students, we do have to schedule our times to talk. So that is a true one. All right. Moving on back, kind of swinging back around to academics. Were you surprised by anything else academically? Did you change your course of study? What kinds of things did you experience as you were moving through college?
I think the first time I went to college, when I was like, when I was at Front Range, I keep changing my major like a lot, and to the point that it was like back then like such a small like consular department, because there's not really like a lot, like there's no like colleges like at a big university, to have the College of Liberal Arts, the College of like Science, Natural Science, and it was just like you just have in general advisors and things like that. So they knew me by name because I was always changing my, like I was like, oh, I want to do this, and they're like, okay, now you need to do this. And I think it's okay to change your mind. It's like, and it's a process. If you're like, okay, like I was like, because I get some, I'm a theater major, so I get a lot of my friends were like, they did, for some weird reason, I was like zoology. A lot of zoology majors switched to theater, which is really interesting. They went from like STEM to like performing arts. It's okay to try to figure things out. And also there's a lot of elective classes. So if for some reason there's something that you're interested about that it's not related to the major or what you want to study right now, that's a good way to take one class about the other thing you're interested about and just give it a try. Talk to an advisor from that department to see what the program is. If you change halfway through, or like even like after one semester, it might change how much longer you stay in college. So just like there are ways to do that, different ways to figure it out. But I think it's okay to experiment and like learn about different things and see what you like.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think like following up on that, that's a great point. I think that 2 things come to mind for me when it comes to like academic changes. First of all, like what your course load looks like is going to be like drastically different than high school. So you're going to be taking, 3 to 4 classes, and you could be starting at 8 a.m. and ending at 2 p.m. You could be starting at noon and ending at like 10 p.m., which is kind of what my schedule is looking like next semester, which I'm actually like excited about. So I think that it's really important to just figure out a schedule that works for you. And timing wise, I know that I'm somebody who would rather do my homework in the morning because that's when I function better. And so in college, you actually have that freedom to be like, yeah, I don't know if I want to have a morning class. I'd rather take one in the afternoon. And so I think that's something that's really interesting. I would also say that tests and test taking are going to be really different. You're not going to just be memorizing concepts. You're going to be really having to think critically and make connections across units, which is not something I expected. In high school, I could kind of get by with, taking a Quizlet and then taking the test and getting the test, like getting an okay grade on the test. In college, it's going to be really different. And I think the only way you can be super successful is going to class every day. Missing a class is extremely detrimental to your academics. Like it will set you back. And if you have professors like mine who are old school, they write on the chalkboard and they do not have a PowerPoint or a presentation prepared. They're not recording this on a Zoom recording. They are writing it with chalk on a chalkboard, and once it's gone, it's gone. And so I think it's really important to recognize that those tests are going to be different. They're going to be a lot of being able to think critically and make a lot of like connections across units. And the real way to grasp that material is to go to class.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll move on. Okay. So switching gears a little bit to living situation. I know we have a couple different scenarios represented in our panel tonight. So I was hoping that we could talk about a couple things. So first of all, many students that are going off to college might be living with somebody, a stranger, for the first time, either in a dorm situation, or if they don't go straight into the dorm, maybe they are in an apartment sometime during college. Or conversely, if you're a student who is attending college in your hometown and you're choosing to live at home, that's a different relationship to navigate with your parents, because you're an adult attending college, but you're still in your home scenario. So there can be issues that arise from that. So can my student panelists kind of talk about those different things for a moment, please?
I guess I can speak on the dorm situation. So my freshman year, I lived in the most traditional dorm you can think of. I was sharing a room with somebody. The bathroom was supposed to like accommodate like 25 people. It was like on my floor was like 100 people, and then there were like, I don't know. The point is there were a lot of people sharing a bathroom, and then I was sharing a room with someone. Thankfully, my roommate and I ended up being a really good match. And so if you have the ability to kind of utilize Facebook or whatever the dorm matching service, like roommate matching like services that your college allows, and you can choose your roommate ahead of time, I would recommend it if you do find somebody that you kind of click with and you think could be a good roommate, because that ended up being something that worked out for me personally. But I think when it comes to kind of discrepancies with your roommate and having those little arguments, I think one of the most important things is to just really pick your battles. You know, you're living with this person. The odds of you guys switching rooms is really low. And so you have to be willing to kind of accept this person for who they are and recognize that you're probably only going to live with them for a year. And so you got to just pick your battles. I know there's going to probably be things that might get on your nerves or kind of annoy you, but you don't want to start a fight if there's not a fight to be had. Now, I think it's different if there was like a really serious situation where it did need to move up to someone higher. And in that case, I think it is a good idea to have like a mitigator, a RA, or whoever is like a live-in resident who could help with something that's a little bit more serious. But I think at the end of the day, there's, you know, things that you just don't want to fight about because you are going to be living with the person.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to share about conflict, either with roommates and dealing with that and strategies for dealing with that, or navigating living at home as an adult?
I can touch on living at home. I guess a couple points that I would make is it is very different. It's definitely different, you know, like I said before, coming home from like college, and then, you know, you're coming home and it kind of feels like you're back in high school. But two things that I would say that are really important is like, don't be afraid to have tough conversations with your parents about like boundaries, or like, you know, specifics in, you know, where you are, or kind of what you're doing, what you're involved with. You know, it's an interesting, yeah, it definitely is an interesting situation. But definitely, you know, stay open with your parents. And yeah, just be willing to set boundaries and have those conversations for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. So let's see. Kind of related to that and on a lighter note, Caroline, this might just be for you. Going back to the dorms and living on campus, this is a little bit of a lighter note. What were things that you brought that were a total waste of time what are some of the essentials? We're going to later on, actually, I do have a slide kind of about the dorm slide. So I'll stop sharing my screen in a moment and show that in a resource that we'll have that will be available after the program as well. But if you want to talk kind of about dorm living.
Yeah, for sure. So I think like I am somebody who, moved, so I kind of had to figure things out as I went. I went when I got to school, I was really with my dad and we were kind of buying things, and then I got some of the basics, but it was really throughout the year when you figure what you want and figure things out. I think that if you have clothes and you look at a, piece of clothing and you are like, I might wear this, maybe I should just bring it. Don't bring it. Like, I'm telling you right now, don't bring it, because you're not going to wear it. Like, you think you are, but if you're not 100% sure, you are not going to bring that piece of clothing. And that's something I have continued to struggle with my entire closet at school with me. And I need to part ways with some of this stuff because it just, I do not wear it. But I'm like, maybe I will one day. I never do. And I think the other thing that's, I would say, a necessity is paper towels. Like, I know this is random, but so many messes happened in my room, and it always just comes back to the paper towel. You can use that thing for anything. You can get it wet and like clean up a little bit of carpet or whatever. Like, I would get paper towels immediately because you don't think about it, but then you are like, oh my God, I have all these messes happening in my room, or I need like a piece of like, I don't know, like a little makeshift plate for snacks or something. Like, I need a paper towel. I think the one other thing that I would recommend bringing is just one business professional outfit. You never know when some campus recruiter is going to be around. There might be a conference happening. So much stuff happens at school, and a lot of it requires a professional outfit. And it's not something that I thought about when I went to school, but the more time that passed, the more I realized I want to be going to these events, but I don't really have the right attire for it. And so I think just having one basic professional outfit that you can wear is really going to help you out for those different professional events.
Thank you for sharing. Hopefully everybody is seeing the screen that I have, the PowerPoint back up. So Caroline, thanks. You talked about like what items did you really need? I missed, did you say there's anything you've left behind? Mostly just clothes that were like extra? Yeah. Did you do anything that make your room feel like home? Maybe a little less lonely?
Yeah, so
Or-
I'm a very like sentimental person, so I definitely like, if I have like something that reminds me of home or something that, I don't know, brings me joy, I'm not afraid to like tape it up on the wall with like some painter's tape or something that won't like completely pull the paint off the wall. But I definitely think that it's super fun to be able to like decorate your room. I always feel kind of like weird going into like my guy friends' rooms because they're just the most barren, like nothing is in there, the just bare essentials. And I'm always like, you guys, like, what is this? Like, let's get some fairy lights, let's get some fun decorations. So I'm always pro having a little bit of something to remind you of home, but also just decorations that can just make it a little bit, more unique, more individualized to yourself.
Thanks for sharing. So y'all have had a chance to look at the screen for just a moment, considerations such as the weather at your college destination. How will you get these things there? Am I driving there? Am I flying there? Does it have to fit on a plane? At the end of the school year, how will it get back? Or will I have to store it in my the location where I'm going to school? So with all those things in mind, we will have this is a college essential dorm checklist, but you'll see it has a ton of things on it. And not all of these things are necessarily things that you need to bring. And some of them you can get when you get there. But I did just want to point out that it is a resource that will be available to you and is worth looking at, especially if you're somebody who is going away to college. Definitely take a look. Also keeping in mind the things that are not allowed in your dorm. So I'm just going to double check the chat to see if we have any questions on that. And oh, thank you, Jenny. She did put that link in our chat. So if you want to click on that, so it's open in your browser and it's something you can bookmark and come back to later, Jenny has taken care of that for you. So, all right. One other slide that I want to show, and our panelists can chime in on this, is adulting. How else should I prepare? And this is a lot of information, and there are several links in here, which Jenny will also put on the chat. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but I just want to introduce it because a lot of this is the boring stuff that people forget about, both students and parents alike. Most people beginning college are 18 or about to become 18 or are older. And that means you're an adult now, which means that some of the decisions your parents or guardians used to make on your behalf, they can no longer do so without permission and advanced planning. And so these are some things that you should think about and have conversations about in advance. For example, we talked about this before, but health needs on campus. Some universities require families to purchase their health insurance or prove you have health insurance by another accepted means to waive that cost. So if you don't have to pay for it, it's good to know that you're going to waive it, or you should know that you're required to have theirs. We also talked about knowing how to access your health care. Where are the doctors in my health insurance network, et cetera. Legal forms, and nobody here at Poudre Libraries is an attorney or giving legal advice, but these are some conversations that you should have as well, and some forms that you should consider. Things like a medical durable power of attorney. That is something that enables a trusted other person, adult, to make decisions for you if you're unable to speak for yourself. Things like HIPAA waivers, financial POAs, those allow a parent or a guardian to sign a document, access your bank account if you decide that that is appropriate. So there are some resources here, again, that Jenny has put in the chat. And then for those who don't have ready access to an attorney, which is many of us, Poudre Libraries also has a free drop-in legal clinic once per month. And there is a link to that. This is the August one. However, it is a monthly event that would be available to you. And lastly, I'm going to quickly show this Grown and Flown checklist. Parents, they're a blog that has tons of information and self-support for parents whose children have flown the nest. And these are, this is a good kind of checklist just to run through if you are getting ready to go off to college. So that link is in the chat as well. I think I'm going to go to the next slide. So this kind of touches back on some things that Allie was talking about earlier. Know before you go how to access mental health resources. I'll just repeat Allie's suggestion about knowing where counseling services can be accessed within your university, going to the university website, both in campus and then also using resources to see where ongoing mental health resources might be available in your community that your university or college is located in. Also in the second bullet, crisis mental health services. Most colleges or universities should have a hotline, a specific mental health resource for students in immediate crisis. So know what that number is and where to access it. Hopefully you won't need it or your friend won't need it, but it's comforting to know that you already know where it is if you do. Also the academic tutoring or support services that Allie mentioned earlier, especially within your specific major, and where to access common healthcare, whether it's your school's student health center, know where that is and how to reach them. If you have the flu or a cold, or an urgent care that's either on campus or really close by in case you have some other off hours or urgent care need. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. And Allie, I'll let you talk to your top five takeaways.
Sure, I struggled to narrow it down to 5, but if I had to boil it down, I would say first, and one of the absolute most important things, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I know that's so cliche, but a lot of students, especially when they get to college, there's this sense of, I'm an adult, I'm independent, I'm gonna do this all myself. And when things start getting challenging, it's really hard to admit that you need some help. But the smartest students truly are the ones that take advantage of the resources that exist. So ask for help. And there are a lot of resources available, but you need to seek them out proactively and take advantage of them. So just because tutoring options exist, that doesn't help you at all if you don't take the initiative to go to tutoring. So it's on you to take advantage of those resources. Also, we've talked about this quite a bit, but college is mentally very challenging. Physically, you might have a roommate, you're living in close proximity to a lot of people. Sicknesses are going to happen. So take care of yourself mentally as well as physically. And that includes things as simple as the way that you're eating, how much you're sleeping, things that sound obvious, but when it's your first time away from home and you have a school, dining court that has pizza every single day, it's really tempting to eat pizza every single day, which is awesome until you're sick and sluggish and wondering what happened. So be smart and take care of yourself. And then this transition is hard for absolutely everyone. So you are not the only one who's struggling. Don't ever feel like you're doing something wrong if it's a difficult transition. It means you're human. And then the last thing, a lot of people feel like they have to walk onto campus their first day, knowing exactly what they want to do, what they want to study, have their whole life planned. You don't. Give yourself permission to take the class that sounds interesting but has nothing to do with your major, to try a club that you never thought you would ever join. College is for that as much as it is for getting a degree. So take that time to explore, and you never know what you're going to find that you end up being super passionate about.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie. I do know we're going to move over into our Q&A time for our guests with us today to ask some questions. And I know that we already had one come in earlier in the chat. So I was already hoping that maybe Allie and our panelists might talk a little bit about financial aid and where they access that. This came from a student who's not about to go to college, but wants to, it's their goal in the next year or two. And so best approaches to accessing financial aid, especially in this day and age of the high cost of higher education.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest barriers for a lot of us, is it can be really expensive. The number one thing I would recommend is filing what's called the FAFSA. So FAFSA. And that is kind of a document where you include things like your family tax information. And you need to fill out that document in order to be eligible for almost all financial aid. Whether it's coming from the government, from your school, you need that FAFSA. So the absolute most important thing, start there. File that no matter what. And after that, every college is going to have a financial aid office. They are a great resource. Since every school has its own scholarships, it does things a little bit differently. Contact those people. You can do that as a prospective student and ask them what types of scholarships are available, where they can get more information. They would love to help you out in any way that they can, but you need to ask them so that they can get you that information. So FAFSA first, financial aid office second. That will get you a long way.
Okay, can I add a few things too? Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Then I also wanted to point out, I was noticing, I double checked our calendar, and last year in September, we had kind of at the library, we held an event that was about helping people fill out their FAFSA. It doesn't look like we have that scheduled for this September, but I'm going to look into getting it scheduled for October. So be on the lookout for that. October is when you can first file it for the next school year, and it's generally due by June. And then schools will have different sort of preferential dates. So kind of definitely look into that, ask those questions, and keep that in mind. I also have to say, as the daughter of a community college professor, consider going to community college for your first few years. You can get your general ed requirements and some of even your initial major classes out of the way at a much cheaper tuition. And also try out a few things if you're not quite sure what you want to do. And it may seem like colleges won't look at that favorably, but they really do, because it's shown that you can do college level work and not just high school level work. The other thing I'd say, and this is more just personal experience based on my niece and nephew and where they've gone to college and where I went to college, is that it can seem like if because colleges are expensive, that the small private colleges are particularly out of your reach. But honestly, those are some of the ones that will have some of the best financial aid offers to you, possibly, depending on your situation and your unique qualities. So definitely consider that. Don't discount that. And then one last thing is, if you are doing that, because those applications can cost a lot of money, look into when different states and colleges have free application days. Colorado has one that comes up in October, so keep an eye out for that.
Thank you, Jenny. And I will piggyback on that as well. So it's surprising sometimes how much financial aid might be available in private universities to students who are not in higher income brackets. So going back to that quote we had earlier about don't take yourself out of the game before you've even started, or don't even say that I can't do that. Definitely look into all of the possibilities and resources that might be available. There's also scholarship programs that match students to certain colleges and universities. And then there's college-specific scholarships, both need-based and merit-based. It can feel daunting because there's a lot of work involved in writing essays and things like that. But there are resources out there to help, and hopefully as many students as possible can get matched to those resources. So
I kind of just wanted to add really
Yeah.
quickly, just a couple things on the note of private universities. You want to look into your school, but there's often something called meets needs, which is where I go to school. That's how they fulfill financial aid. And the idea there is that no matter how much your parents can contribute income-wise, whatever you cannot pay as a family, the school will pay for. And so when you fill out that financial aid form, whatever the form determines your family can contribute, you will not have to pay for anything more than that. And that's like an awesome benefit of a lot of private universities, because public schools often rely on government funding. They just simply do not have as much funding as private schools. And then I kind of want to build off of that. If you are a work study student, which I am, that's also reliant on government funding. And so what you can find as a work study student is you might actually run out of money when you are working in your job. And this can be kind of a shocking thing, because you're like, this is my job, this is supposed to support me, and now I'm out of money. But what I've found is that if you go to the financial aid office at the end of the year, they might be a little bit more lenient towards giving you more money towards your work study, or even financial aid, I'm not sure, but work study specifically, yes, because of the fact that they have budgets set aside for each year. And so they'll have some extra money that they'd be maybe more willing to give. And so this past semester, I had to ask for more money for my work study position, and they were more lenient and actually gave me a lot more money than I asked for initially, because they just had some leftover money from the budget. So those are just some things to consider when it comes to financial aid.
Yeah, and thank you, Caroline, for mentioning that term. If you're looking at those college guidebooks and trying to figure out which private universities are most likely to give this type of financial aid, the terms you're looking for are needs sensitive and needs blind, I believe. Those are the ones that are most likely to be making sure that that they will be filling that gap no matter how much you make. Needs blind says that they absolutely will, and that they admit purely based on merit and not based on need. Needs sensitive means that they admit most of their students most simply based on merit, and yet will still fill that gap for the most part.
Yeah.
Can I also mention just one thing?
Of course, go ahead, go for it.
So as important as it is to also like keep touch with your academic advisor, I think it's also just as important to keep in touch with the financial aid office. I've been grateful enough that my mom works in the financial aid department at CSU. So there's a lot of things that I see that a lot of students and parents don't see. For instance, like if you do drop a class or you fail a class, that hurts your financial aid packet and can really affect the aid that you get. So making sure you're kind of keeping in touch with the office is just as important as like keeping in touch with your academic advisor.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that, Izzy. And I'll just quickly add one other thing as well. The work study jobs, if you choose to take advantage of that when you go to college, the reason I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my 3 kids have all had these kinds of jobs, is work study. They're jobs usually on campus that, yes, there is a job to do. And yes, you're not going to be like just sitting there not doing any work, but you also generally have time to study at the same time. So each of my kids had different roles, but they might be manning a desk in the community center where they're checking out pool equipment to the students as they come in, but they can study in between, or other various jobs. So there are those types of things available that are working, but you also can study a little bit at the same time.
They can also sometimes be more willing to train you. I started working with computers first as my work study job, and it was that kind of thing, as they were looking to teach students versus like hire outside people.
Yeah. And good places to build skills. Yeah.
We do have a question.
Great.
And that is in the Q&A, it says, when you are sick, what do you need to do? I'm assuming this is related to classes, like when you aren't able to go to a class.
So at CSU, I've been weirdly thankful enough that a majority of my classes, if you email the professor, like, sorry, I can't make it to class today. What do I need to do? They gave us 2 kind of sick days, as you will, which is very, very generous of them. But just making sure you're keeping communication with your professor also, as well as like classmates, making those connections in classes and just being like, hey, can you like fill me in, or, whatever.
And Julian, we do have a question from Gloria. Gloria, si quieres abrir tu micrófono, este es un buen momento.
Sí, hola a todos. ¿Sí me escuchan?
Yes.
Bueno, mi nombre es Gloria. Yo tengo una hija en la universidad y un hijo en el high school. Y más que todo estoy agradecida con la biblioteca. Cuando vi el tema me interesó bastante porque me siento frustrada. Quizás tanto yo como mi hija de la universidad, porque ella, yo me frustro porque como ella es mi primera hija y yo no hablo bien el idioma, trato de estar dentro de la comunidad y hacer mis averiguaciones, pero no son satisfactorias para mí. Y yo trato de ayudarla a ella y ella le busca por su parte, pero es frustrante de que ella no encuentra respuestas o no tiene el apoyo, y a mí me frustra porque ella tiene sueños grandes. Ella quiere ser estudiar medicina, especialidad en neurología, y me frustra que vaya a tirar esos sueños a la basura pues sí, por la frustración de que no vemos. Ella ha aplicado para el FAFSA y ni una vez se la han aprobado. Ella fue a Fort Ranch en el tiempo de la pandemia, entonces su trabajo de Fort Ranch fue tirado a la basura también. Entonces no tuvo créditos de nada. Cuando iba a high school, ella hizo, hacía el IB, dormía hasta tarde. Se esforzó mucho. Yo sé que todos los universitarios trabajan mucho, los de la escuela trabajan mucho, y ella se ha esforzado mucho y me frustra mucho no poderla ayudar con los recursos. Ella perdió un año de universidad. Digo, lo perdió porque no fue por la frustración, pero yo la apoyé y ella estudió un año de cosmetología para para no perder tiempo, pero pues solamente ella lo usó como para, para tener para tener un trabajo y poder ayudarse ella misma a pagar su escuela, porque no ve apoyo de ningún otro lado. Entonces yo quisiera saber cómo como mamá puedo buscar esos recursos para poderla ayudar y para poder ayudar a mi hijo también, porque él ya va a ir al 11. Entonces quiero prepararme para no sentirme como me siento ahora, porque sí, es muy frustrante. Y ella de hecho dice, hablaba Jesús sobre lo de DACA y eso, y ella dice que pues ella le gustaría ser un participante de DACA mejor, porque ella nació aquí afortunadamente, pero para ella es desafortunado. Ella quisiera ser de DACA porque dice, yo veo que ellos tienen muchos más recursos que nosotros. Nosotros por tener un seguro tenemos que como buscar o pagar o endrogarnos más. No sé realmente si seas verdad o no, no estoy bien informada, pero ella me dice eso. Yo quisiera ser mejor de DACA que haber nacido aquí. Y y sí, son muchas cosas que me frustran a mí, entonces no sé cómo ayudarlos, tanto a ella como a mi hijo.
Gloria, primero que nada, muchas gracias por compartir tu experiencia en este grupo. Estamos limitados un poquito con el tiempo ya y para ser respetuosos del tiempo de nuestros panelistas y de nuestros participantes, posiblemente pudiéramos terminar si alguno de los panelistas tuviera algo que agregar. Y yo tengo la información de la persona que está haciendo esta pregunta. Si podemos apoyarla con más recursos de manera personal, sería algo que a nosotros como biblioteca nos daría mucha alegría poder hacer. Entonces, si alguno de ustedes tiene algún recurso con que pudiéramos conectar a Gloria y a su familia, se los agradeceríamos mucho a Ali, Jesús, Isi, Carolina, Gillian y también a Jenny.
Thank you. Yeah, I share a lot of compassion with you because I know that is a challenging barrier, and it's one that we haven't completely solved in this country, and one that I know we at the library are hoping to help connect to resources in addition to those that are found in PSD in our local school district. Because even with what's available at schools, we're seeing gaps in ability to access resources. And that is a shared goal that we hope to help address in our community. So we will try and see what resources we can pull together. Does anybody else on the panel real quick want to address that or share a resource before I turn it over?
I think one thing that I could speak on personally is just the high school experience and what happens when you are learning about college as a high schooler. And so I think when it comes to your son who is, approaching the time in his life when it's time to apply to college and learn about it, I think it's never too soon to do that. I was applying to college during the pandemic, and so I just had a lot of time on my hands. And what I would do just constantly was just research college, research the application process, attend information sessions hosted by colleges. And I think that those are amazing resources. And I also think that college or high school, like school counselors, are often really underutilized. And so maybe just reaching out to them and saying like, hey, my son is interested in college. Like, what are some next steps? What are some ways we can learn about the application process for schools? How can we start, preparing for the FAFSA now? Things like that. When it comes to your son applying to college and starting early, like, I think that would be a great idea. So yeah, that's what I can say about as a high schooler applying to college.
Thanks, Caroline. We are right at about 7:30, which is, I know, where we said we would cut off. And I see that there might be another question in the chat. Jenny, do you see that question?
That's, I think, the Q&A question. You know, let
Okay.
me answer.
Oh, that was the old one.
I'll
Okay.
go away. Yeah, that's what it's coming up as. Yeah, sorry. I should have.
That's okay. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. It was such a wonderful conversation, and I'm so grateful to our panelists for sharing their time and their personal experiences with us. It's been very generous of you to do that. I hope that for our attendees, that has been something that's been worthwhile, and that you've all come away with those resources and strategies and confidence. Plus, of course, we will be emailing you a follow-up. If you attended as a registered attendant, we already should have your email. If you didn't, at the bottom of your screen right now, you should be able to see 3 contact names and our emails. That is for me, Jillian Harrison, for Jenny, and for Ludi, and our emails. So whether you take a screenshot or write those down, let us know that you would like to receive those resources, and we will send you a follow-up email as well. And if you could do that by, I think, this Thursday, the 20th, that way we can group it all into one email to all of our attendees today. And with that, I'm going to stop my screen share. And thank you all for coming. Is there anything else, Jenny, that I'm missing right now?
No, except that I just want to invite everyone to remember that they can always ask us questions, either by emailing us at any time and also by coming to the reference desk. The types of questions that are related to college, we're not necessarily going to be able to look up right away, like we are able to, locate a book on dinosaurs right away, but we can take your information and get back to you with resources. So definitely always keep that in mind.
Right. And there are research tabs as well on the internet that we have access to, and other library links and things like that that we might be able to help direct you to in terms of college databases and things like that. So, all right. Thank you all. And thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Ludi, for your help. And we will see you at the library.